basically what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through, if I was a bidder that was bidding for this, what are the things that I would do to submit a bid, basically. So we'll talk through Public Contracts Scotland. We'll just look at that really, really quickly, just in case nobody's found the notice yet, and how to then find the tender within PCS tender, and then we'll just literally go through each section as you would if you were completing it. Please feel free, if you've got questions as we go along, just jump in with them. It's no problem at all. Sometimes it's quite nice for it to be interactive like that. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. About between screens today, so I hope that's okay. But once we get onto PCST, we'll sort of stay there for a little while. So just very, very quickly, I am assuming everybody is already on Public Contracts Scotland. If you're not, you literally just go onto Public Contracts Scotland, register as a supplier. It's a fairly straightforward process. You're just putting information in about your company, and that will be you set up with a profile there. In order to find so I'm not actually going to find this list today because I've already registered interest in it. So I'm going to just pick a different one just as an example. So I'm going to pick supply and maintain water coolers. But just let's pretend that this is for the tender that we're interested in. Once you've found your notice, you're just clicking in to that. And then what you will see at the top of the screen, because they're using PCS tender to administer the tender process, it's basically saying we're using another website to facilitate this tender, and here is where you go and find that. So the really important thing from this is that you are able to find the project code, because that's what you need in PCST to be able to find the notice. So I'm going to show you with this one how you would register interest, and then I'm going to jump into the correct one. I just had to register interest for it already so that I could download all the documents and stuff, so that I actually knew what I was talking about today. So we go over to PCS tender, and as I say, probably most of you have already done this stage, so apologies if I'm telling you something that you already know. If you've not registered on PCS tender, you will be able to register here. So it's just under the sign in button, and again that's just going to ask you information about your company. So the actual setting up of that registration is fairly straightforward. You'll get an email, a sort of validation email. You click that and that's you now got your profile. So we'll just assume that we do have that, and we're just going to sign in to PCS tender. So where we want to go is under projects and under ITTs. Sometimes it's a little bit slow, so bear with me. So in ITTs open to all suppliers, what you have to do is you need to find the drop down for project code. So just click that. And then in the value box, you're going to put in that project code. So this is not the project code for the one that we're going to do. I'll let you know what that is. So once you've put in that project code, it brings up that specific tender that you're going to be working on. You're going to click through into that, and then you're going to express an interest in it. And then once you've expressed an interest, that then gives you access to all the relevant documentation, and it gives you access to the Q&A functionality as well, and then the sections where you can answer the questions that are being asked of you. So now that I've showed you how to find it, I'll go into the actual one, because we don't want to be talking about water coolers today, but that was purely just to show you how to find the notices. So if we go back into ITTs, once you've already registered interest, that is going to now show in my ITT. So I've got quite a lot in here because I'm working on lots of different things with different clients, but you are probably just going to have one or two things in here. But the one that we are interested in is the flexible framework for vocational and skill-based interventions. So if you've not done that bit where you find it on PCST, the project code for this one is 30479.
So again, you would just go into ITTs open to all, you select that project code drop down, and then you type in 30479. And then once you've registered your interest, that'll then sit within my ITTs rather than ITTs open to all. Excuse me, I'm absolutely choked with the cold, so if I stop to sneeze, I'm really sorry. Okay, so that's how we found the notice. So I'm now going to click into this one. So for the rest of the day, we're forgetting about water coolers. And I'm just going to show you a few bits and pieces in here. As I say, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. You'll see the little circle running. So important things to know, when you have registered interest, you now have access to all the documents. So there's a little tab which says buyer attachments. You're going to click on that. And the first thing you should be doing before you start completing your tender response is you're going to read all those documents. And I appreciate that that is a lot. There's a lot of information in there, but hopefully from today, we'll start to work through some of that in terms of what is the key things that you need. For some reason, it's not letting me click. There we go. Click in. So we click in. So you can see there's 13 documents in there. Lots of different things, and we'll go into them in more detail today. But basically that pack of documents is going to tell you what is it exactly that the council is procuring, what is the specification, what are the terms and conditions, and really importantly, what is it that they need from you in order to submit your tender response. What are all the things that you need to answer and provide? And then they're also going to tell you how they're going to evaluate the tender responses when they come back in. So very important to read through these documents. And as I say, we'll go into them in a bit more detail. The other thing, I always do that. I come right back out into the main ITTs instead of going back just to the one that I'm in. Sorry about that. So I'll go back in there. The other really important thing is the messages inbox. So basically, you have the ability to add you need to say about anything. There's a evaluation criteria that you don't know if you meet it and you want to get more information. If there's just anything where you're unclear about what's being said, you can ask questions about that. So this message inbox is really important. So it's important for a couple of reasons. You can submit your questions through that, but also if anyone else asks a question and the buyer answers that question, you will also receive the response to that person's question. So the reason for that is so that everybody has basically got the same information upon which to build their bid. So, if I asked a question about the price schedule and said, oh, there's a line missing from the price schedule, and the buyer came back and said, all right, okay, just submit a separate document that tells us what the price is for that particular thing. If they only told me that information, then we're not on a level playing field. Everyone else does not have that info. So they have to be transparent. They need to make sure that everybody gets those answers. So you'll see, if you go into the received messages part, you will see that there's already been questions that have been asked and answered. So you can go in and check what the Q&As have been on that so far. That is going to help you because somebody else might have already asked a question that you were going to ask, so you don't need to ask it anymore. But then if there is anything else that you're not sure about that you want to question, then you can go in and put a question in. So there's a little button on the right hand side, a little blue button that says create. That's you creating your question. And it basically is like, what is the question? What's the subject? It is classification. So if it's about like the tender deadline or something, it's going to be administration. They're all pretty self-explanatory, but if you're not sure where it sits, just put other, a little title, and then you just put your message, and then you send that message. And as I say, once the buyer receives that message, they will answer that, and that response will go to everyone. If you put something in that was really commercially sensitive, where you named your company or you put your email address or something like that in, they would just reject that question. You would get an explanation as to response to everyone else. So I'll just come out of there. Does anybody have questions about this part so far? I realise this is sort of quite high level stuff, but is that okay so far? Anything?
Nothing in the chat at the moment. Nothing in the chat.
Okay. So if we go back the way to the buyer attachments, as I say, there's 13 attachments in there, and we want to download all of those and make sure that we've read them and we understand what is required. So you're going to just click into them. I think you can do a mass download, or you can just download them one by one, whatever you want to do. But I create a little folder on my my drive, and then I've got everything that was downloaded from the PCST all in one folder. And from this is how you're going to start planning out your bid, because you need to know what is the things that they're asking you to provide. So I'm going to open up just some of the key documents to look at, and we will go into them in a bit more detail as we go through the session. So just bear with me while I jump between screens. So the first document is details of the requirement. Excuse me, hopefully that opens up in a little second. And it's just a little bit slow. So I do apologise. Oh, that's far too big. So this document is basically what is it that's needed? What is this thing that they're procuring? Why are they doing it? What is the background to it? It also tells you what it doesn't include, what the aims are. It's going a bit blurry when I scroll down. It gives you an indication of the learner numbers that's going to be involved in that, and it then goes into what the mandatory requirements are in the specific subject areas. So definitely read through that and take a bit of time to look at that, make sure you do fit within these requirements, but this is where you starting to understand what exactly is it that they need. I'm sorry, the document's just going really blurry when I try and scroll through it, but this is setting out basically what they require of you as a contractor if you were appointed onto this framework. Okay, and then I'll just go into one of the other documents. Hopefully they're not all like that. I don't know what's going on with that one. Okay. And then there's various different documents. So there's the terms and conditions, they've got spending conditions. This is all the legal stuff. This is what sits behind the contract and the framework once that's implemented. So you want to familiarise yourself with that. You want to understand that, what are the contractual terms? Are you happy with them? Do you need to ask any questions on them? And there's a bit about data protection. You might want to run, if you've got a legal team or anything like that, you might want to run the T's and C's past them. There's then various other documents, so we'll talk through those as we progress. These are forms that need to be completed, so things like the form of tender, submission certificate, subcontractor schedule, serious crime. These are things that need to be completed as part of your tender submission. So we're going to look at when and where you need to fill those in and upload them. But the really, and we have got a pricing schedule in there as well, but the really, really important document that you want to look at is the ITT document, because this is the document that basically explains how this tender process is going to work and how they're going to decide the outcome of that. So I'll just make that a little bit bigger. So
in here, we have got, again, a little bit of background. What is the procurement opportunity? And then one of the really key things to pick out from this is, I'm just going to scroll down because I'm not going to go through the whole document, but the indicative procurement timetable, that's really important. So the deadline for the submission of tenders is, it says, as stated on PCST. So let me just remind myself what that is. That is like your most important date that you need to know. So the date for that is the 9th of December at 12 o'clock. I didn't know that, but I just wanted to double check. So the 9th of December at 12 o'clock is the deadline where you have to have submitted your tender response by. If you are 1 minute past, the system will not allow you to submit your tender on that, after that date or time. It just doesn't allow it to happen. Something that someone asked me recently was, like, if they submit it too early, is that a bad thing? Because then the buyer could look at it and know their pricing and stuff. Not at all. So the buyer is not able to open any of the responses until that deadline is closed. So the system protects that. They will know that they've response, but they won't know who it's from. And as I say, they can't open it until that tender deadline closed, and it doesn't allow any late submissions at all. So if for any reason you did feel that you need more time, the only way to get that is to request an extension of time through that Q&A post box. Most of the time that's rejected, but if there was like a real genuine reason, or I don't know, like everyone's IT system shut down for a week, then they would maybe extend the timeline, but it's generally stick to the time. And what I do when I'm planning a bid is I normally aim for my deadline to be a few days beforehand. So I think the 9th is a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. I would probably have like the Friday as the deadline for me to get it all submitted, and that just gives you a wee bit of flexibility. But I know in the real world it doesn't always happen like that. I have had like very last minute tenders going in. So sorry, someone just came at my door to deliver a parcel. I'm just telling them to leave it there. So just aim to get that submitted like by the Friday if possible. That would be my tip, because it's not good for anybody's nervous system to be doing it at the last minute. I have done one for a client at 11:59 when it was due in at 12, and it wasn't because of me, it was because I was waiting for information on them. But I honestly felt like I was about to have a panic attack. It wasn't a very nice experience, so don't do that if you don't have to. So anyway, the ITT, so we've got the timetable. It also tells you about when you're going to make the reward decision. So once you submitted this in December, you're probably not going to hear anything back until March time, quite a long period of time, but they're expecting a lot of responses to this particular tender. So there is, if you don't hear anything by January sort of thing, don't be panicking. And they're looking for this to start on the 4th of May. The ITT also explains about the procurement process. So sort of documents what is the evaluation process. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and as I say, read through all of this and make sure that you understand it all. But some key things to point out. So the submission instructions, they are basically explaining what are all the different forms that need to be completed, what is the format that you need to submit it in. It needs to be done through PCS tender. You need to be providing that in English. If there's any word limits stated within the questions, you need to comply with those. Anything over those word limits will just not be read at all. You're only able to provide supporting documents if you've been asked to do that. So they don't want loads and loads of marketing literature being submitted. Just scroll down a little bit. So details of the requirement, we've got that in that other separate document. We've got a bit of information about community benefits, so we'll come on to that a bit later. community benefits is something that they would like you to deliver as part of your appointment to this contract, and they have linked it with the value that you're going to get from the contract. So if you are not getting £50,000, you don't need to provide any additional community benefits. If you are making, £1 million from this, they want 6 community benefit points, and basically the points are there's the more points, the more sort of investment that you're making to deliver those community benefits. But we'll go on to that later. Excuse me. They do have a menu as well, so that basically explains things that you could offer as part of your community benefit offering and what points would be allocated to that. So skip down past. So we've got the terms of and conditions of participation. Again, this is all the sort of legal stuff, the things that you need to comply with. I won't go into those in detail. And what I'm trying to find is, yes, what is the submission requirements? So this is basically your sort of checklist, if you like. So in addition to the information that's in Annex 5, which we'll come on to, there's various different forms that need to be completed. So you saw them briefly on the downloaded documents, but we've got a form of tender document, we've got a submission certificate, a subcontractor schedule, and a declaration of non-involvement in serious and organised crime. And when we go into PCST and look at how you complete the forms, it prompts you to upload those documents, and if you've not done that, it won't let you submit. So that sort of acts as a little bit of a checklist as well. And then Annex 5, this is the bit that's sort of you really want to get your head around what this says. So this is basically explaining how the evaluation process is going to work. So they're using a selection stage and then an award stage. So the selection stage is the qualification envelope, and we'll go on and have a look at that within PCST. And then the award stage consists of your technical envelope. So that's basically your scored criteria. And there is some non-scored like pass-fail stuff in there, but this is the bit where they're going to give you points basically for the technical response, and then also your commercial envelope, so that's your pricing. So we'll have a look at what those envelopes look like. If your tender is, so they're basically then saying that what they're going to look at first is that qualification envelope. They're going to make sure that your tender is compliant before they even look at the other parts of it. Sorry. It just keeps going blurry when I scroll down. I don't know if you guys can see that as well. So they'll look at the selection criteria, and that is basically a pass-fail section. So you either pass that or you don't. And if you do, then they will take forward your response and they'll review the technical envelope and the commercial envelope and add up your points on those. Scrolling down. I thought it was going to tell us how they're going to evaluate it, but I think it's actually in the ITT, so let's just ignore that. So let's jump over. Does anybody have any questions just now? I realise that was sort of jumping out about a little bit. So has anybody got any questions, or is there anything in the ITT that anyone's unsure about at the moment that they want to discuss?
No, there's nothing in the chat just now. ITT stands for your invitation to tender, just so we're aware. And yeah, it was going blurry for us too, your document.
Was it? Right, okay,
So
okay. Right. Hopefully when we go into PCST we'll be okay, but if there's any problems with it, just let me know and we can.
Thanks, Mandy. We're good to continue.
Figure out a solution. Sometimes we're just at the mercy of these items, aren't we? It's yeah, sometimes it just does go blurry or the sound goes a bit weird, and we just try and make the best of it. So I'm just going back into the thing in IT and PCST.
So I spoke about the different envelopes. So we've got the qualification envelope, the technical envelope, and the commercial envelope. And if we go in CST, you can see those there. So the blue text that's highlighted or underlined, if you click into that, that's then going to take you into that qualification response. What's really good about PCST is it keeps track of what you've completed and what you've not completed. So at the moment, we've got 49 missing mandatory responses. If I try to submit the response without filling those in, it won't let me do that. So it's quite good in that way. It makes sure that you've filled in all the different sections that you need to fill in. So I'll go into the qualification response section first, and we'll just talk through what is it that you need to do to be able to complete this. Again, it's a little bit slow, so bear with me. So there's some questions in here that I don't think we need to discuss because there are questions about your business. There's things that you're going to know without needing any guidance or support from anyone else. So the first question is just about the supplier response guides. Have you read them? You just need to confirm that you've read them. Basically, they want to know that you've read the back. Then ask some questions about you as a business. So this whole section is just, you know, who are you? What is your company name? What's your company number, address, and so on. So I'll just scroll right past that because I am absolutely sure you will know how to fill that in. They then want to know what type of organisation that you are. This has no bearing on whether they're going to award the contract to you or not. This is more for statistical information. So they want to know how many SMEs are getting onto their contracts. They've got sort of, not targets, but they have objectives to promote SMEs onto their contracts and frameworks. They also ask about if you're going to be participating together with others. So that would be if you're working with other businesses as a group or a consortium or as a joint venture. Probably most of you are not, but if you are, and if you answer yes to that question, they then want to know a bit more information about what is the role of you as the bidder? Are you the sort of lead on it? Who are the other people that are participating as part of this? And then they also expect you to complete the SPD document, or not you, but the other partners that you're bidding with. They need to complete the SPD document. And what that is basically the same information that you're filling in here online, but for anyone that's additional, they would be doing it in this document. So I'll just show you what that document looks like quickly. If it lets me close it, I don't know why it's doing that. It seems like everything's just slowed right down today. I don't know why that is. Show you when we go on to subcontractors as well. So you would have to upload the response for everybody that was part of that consortium, if that's something that you're doing. Is this not doing that just now? This representatives of the bidder, so you might feel like it's asking sort of similar information that you've already filled in. This would be, say I am the person that is representing my company. It's more personal information about me. Don't know why it wants your date of birth or your place of birth. I guess it's just to verify that you're a real person, but I feel like it's a bit personal, but never mind. So you're going to know that information. 2C1 is, does the buyer rely on the capacities of other entities to meet the selection criteria set out in Part 4? So this is basically if you need someone else to be able to
meet the criteria. So I'll use an example that's got nothing to do with the work that you guys are undertaking, but it's quite a good example. I recently helped a joinery company to submit a bid, and one of the requirements that was on that tender was that they needed to have gas safe registration, because it was kitchens and bathrooms that were being fitted, and they also needed the electrical certification, EIC. So the company themselves didn't have that certification because they subcontract the boiler works and the electrical work. So what they would have to do in this case is they would answer yes to this question, because they can't meet that selection criteria without those other entities. So they're going to say yes to that. And again, it's then going to ask for more information, and specifically it's asking for that SPD document. And then if we go further down, it also asks about subcontractors. So that is, it sounds like the same question, but it's not. So the subcontractors might be, if this was the joinery company again, for example, for the heating and the electrical works, yes, they rely on those bidders to meet the selection criteria. If they're going to subcontract some of the works to another joinery company, they don't rely on them to meet the selection criteria because they already meet the joinery related selection criteria, but they are still going to subcontractor. So that's the difference there. And again, you would have to complete this SPD form. I'm just going to see if it's going to let me open that. Just give me a little second, because I would like to show you what that looks like. Excuse me. Okay, I think it's going to let me open it. So let me just do that and then share. So this is the SPD document. So as I say, this is basically what, oh, it's making me log in now, sorry. Don't know why it's doing that. Annoying. Thought I was prepared with all the documents, and now it's making me log back in. So this is basically an Excel spreadsheet version of the questions that you've already been answering or are going to go on to answer within the PCST site. So just bear with me while that opens. So you can see there, it's, you know, who is your company? And we'll go on to some of these questions that it's going to ask, but it's things like there's certain exclusion grounds where public bodies can to award a contract. It's not actually going to let me show you that in a good way, but what I would say, rather than just going into like a lot of detail on what this form says, the questions are fairly self-explanatory, but if you are relying on anyone else to meet the selection criteria, or if you are using subcontractors, please download this form now and send it to them to complete, because I have been in a situation where we couldn't submit a bid purely because we were waiting on this information coming back from subcontractors. So sometimes, you know, it can take a bit of time for them to fill it in. So get ahead of the game and get that out to anyone that needs to possible. So you can download that. It's not actually in the downloads section. You know, that download section that we looked at the beginning, it's not in there. It's actually against the questions within, you know, where it says, are you using subcontractors? If you say yes, there's then, I'll just show you what it looks like. Go back to this tab. There's then a little bit where you can download it directly there. Let me just find it. So there is a little button. Sorry. I don't know if it's disappeared because I've already downloaded it. It should be a little black upside down triangle. Let me just look for it. Apologies. Oh, I can't find it. But what we could actually do is we could upload that to go out with the recording, just so you've got easy access to it, and just get that sent out to anyone that is, you know, if you're bidding with them. That's strange. I can't seem to download it. But we'll attach that along with the recording, and then you'll have access to that. So once you've answered those questions about are you using subcontractors, are you relying on anyone else, anything like that, you're sort of then back to answering questions about yourself. So we then are moving on to what we call exclusion grounds. So there's two different types of exclusion grounds. The first type is what we call mandatory exclusion grounds. So that is basically if you say yes to this question, there is the buyer is not allowed to award you a contract. So the mandatory exclusion grounds are things like conspiracy, corruption, terrorist offences, like all of the stuff that we are really hoping that none of you guys have been involved in. I don't know if you would say yes to the question, even if you had been involved in them, but if you are saying yes to this, you're not allowed to be awarded a public contract, basically. So it's just a drop-down box. Hopefully you're going to say no. Where it says, is the relevant documentation available electronically, you do need to fill that box in. You can just put NA in there, but it won't let you submit your bid unless you fill that in. So money laundering, all those things, let's just skip right through them and assume that you guys have never been involved in any of that stuff. So those are the sort of mandatory exclusion grounds. And then we've got discretionary exclusion grounds. So these are basically where you might have had a discrepancy in the past, but we are allowed to do something called self-cleansing. So I think the tax one is a discretionary one. Let me just check. Yes. So if you say, so the tax one's a good example. So it says, have you met all your obligations related to payment of taxes in the UK and in the country in which you're registered? So if we haven't, if there's been an issue with our taxes in the past, don't just say yes, because they will do some due diligence. So if it's picked up at the award stage, the contracting authority could just decide not to award the contract to you. And I have seen that happen, not specifically on taxes, but on other things. So make sure you're honest with these questions. And these questions are, as I say, self-cleansing questions. So what you would say is no. And then you have to give information about what actually happened. What was the situation? What was the sort of final outcome of that? And what have you done in order to resolve that moving forward? So you're basically explaining, okay, we messed up and here's how we fixed the problem and how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. So there's various different things in the self-cleansing. So there's things like employment, relations regulations, environmental law, social law. So those are the ones where if you have had anything like that, you want to be honest and give the information on that, and then put in that as much information as you can in terms of how you've resolved that going forward. So they're fairly straightforward, I hope. And again, those are yes or no questions with a drop down. So if you then don't comply, then you need to give a bit more explanation. That little box will come up for you. Okay. And then the bit that I wanted to go into, once we've done all those exclusion grounds, we have got the economic and financial standing. So they're looking at your insurance levels in relation to this. And they've specified that they want you to have £10 million employer's liability insurance and £10 million public liability insurance. And you'll see here, you can say, yes, I already have this, but you can also say you don't, but you will commit to obtaining it. So say you've got 5 million for both of these things at the moment. You don't need to go out just now and up that, but you need to commit that you'll do that before the contract starts if you're successful. What I would say is it's really worth checking how much that's going to cost if you are going to increase it, because I have had a situation with a client where one of the insurances, once they just ticked the box to say we'll put it in place, they didn't actually work out how much it was going to be, and it was quite a lot, and it almost basically ate into most of the profit that they were going to make in that contract. So just check, I would guess, with your insurance broker, if we put it up to 10 million, how much extra is that going to be? For professional employers' liability and public liability, it doesn't tend to be a big jump. It's more professional indemnity is a bit more expensive, depending on what it is. So that is the financial standing. And then they are asking you, sorry, I'm just jumping up and down here by accident. They're asking you to provide information about any relevant experience that you have got in delivering this type of service. So what they've said here is it can be from within your organisation, it can be from other consortium members or named entities, and you are going to basically upload a response. So they're saying that you need to provide...
Sorry, can I just check what screen you're on? Because we're in 3D7. Is that where you are?
Right. I'm sharing the wrong screen. I do apologise. So let me just jump quickly back. I really apologise about that. I am very got a very bad habit of doing that. So the exclusion grounds, just to show you quickly, I've explained them, but basically you are just the drop down boxes on those. So have you been involved in conspiracy? No, hopefully not. And as little box, if the relevant documentation is available, just put any in that box. I'll ask you that against each of those questions. I do apologise for that. And then, as I say, the discretionary exclusions, I'll just show you one of them. For example, have you ever been bankrupt? So if you say yes to that, that's going to bring some additional boxes for you to complete. So you need to then explain what was the situation that happened, and basically how you're going to make sure that that's not a problem moving forward. Okay, sorry about that. There's always one situation where that happens. So I'm just going to jump down to the insurances section. So that's here. So again, you are just saying if you've got those insurances, yes, I've already have them. No, but I do commit to obtaining them. If you're going to say no and I can't commit to obtaining it, basically you have not met the selection criteria. So there's no point in you submitting your bid any further. If for any reason you thought that 10 million was ridiculous and there was, it was unreasonable to be asking for that, the way to then handle that is to ask a clarification question on that, and explain the reasons why. They're probably just going to say, no, that's what we need. I don't think it is unreasonable for this particular example, but that would be the way to deal with that. I wouldn't put a bid in if you're saying no. So the next section is about providing your relevant example. So this is the sort of thing I was actually looking for earlier. When you that's going to provide you with the template that you need to complete in order to provide that evidence. And what they're looking for is a minimum of one example of contractual arrangements that you've had over the past 3 years. So that's really important. It needs to be within the past 3 years, and it needs to demonstrate that you've got relevant experience to deliver the similar requirements to what they're asking for. So I'm just going to open up that form. It's quite a basic form, particularly fancy about it, but I'll show you what it looks like. Again, that's not in the attachment download section. That's against this particular question. Okay. So they've provided a template. They've given some instructions within the template in terms of what is going to be required of you, and they've reiterated that it's a minimum of one example and that it needs to have been delivered within the past 3 years. Sorry, it's either not letting me go down and then it lets me go too far down. I'm really sorry. So here's the kind of information that you need to provide is what was the contract, what was the value, who was your customer, what was the contract period, and a contact for that that particular customer. So what they might do is they might take up a reference further down the line where they contact that person. Generally, they will ask if they can do that before they do it. And then you're going to give a detailed overview of the requirements that were delivered under that contract. So what you really want to do is you want to think about when you're explaining what you did in that contract, how is that show you can deliver what the council is asking you to deliver? So trying to relate it back to what they're requesting and make it really clear in that example that because you've done this, you can also do that type of thing. So just anything that's sort of key to this requirement, make sure you're teasing that out within your example. And again, this is part of the selection criteria, so it's not scored. It is a pass-fail. So they're basically going to look at that example and they're going to decide, does that show that this company or this person can deliver what it is that they're bidding to deliver? And it's basically a yes or no answer on that. Ryan's asked a question, by selection criteria, does that include mandatory requirements such as working in partnership with a local college to provide the accreditation part of the tender offer? So the to be appointed to this framework, the vocational or skill-based intervention is levelled on an SCQF framework. Yes, so you need to be approved or accredited centre within a recognised skill sector. So if you are relying on someone else to provide that, then yes, you would be relying on them to meet that selection criteria. And in terms of the suitably qualified staff and trainers, again, yes, you would be relying on it. So if they're your own staff, then your company meets that selection criteria. If you're bringing in, for example, like associate trainers, that might be something that you're doing. If they're their own entity, then you're essentially relying on them to meet that selection criteria. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so just jumping back to the selection section within the selection envelope. So you're going to complete that form with that information and then you're going to upload that. So it just gives you a browse for the file. It's straightforward. It's just exactly the same as attaching it to as a file to an email sort of thing. And then they're asking about your payment terms and also your sort of supply chain. So with that, they're looking for you to explain if you have got subcontractors or suppliers that you work with. They want to know that you're paying them within 30 days, that you've got relevant systems in place to make sure that happens, and that over 95% of your invoices are paid on time. So you need to just provide a bit of information around that. And that's basically because they've got objectives to make sure not only are you paid on time, but anybody that you're subcontracting to is also paid on time. Subcontracting, we've already been asked, are you intending to subcontract and who's it going to be? But they want to know the percentage of the subcontracting as well. That's not scored, so it's for their information. Basically, it's not, you know, if you say 1% or 10%, like it doesn't matter. But they just want to know that information. And then the final part is just a declaration. So you're basically just saying that all the information you've provided is accurate, and then you just name, position, date and place. So once you've completed this section, you're just going to save and exit the response on that. Excuse me. And then I'll just show you. So what that does is it updates the missing mandatory responses. So I think I filled in a couple of the drop down and back here to check
responses that you still need to complete. And you can come in and out of that as many times as you want as well. And then we're going to look at the technical response. It gives you a bit of an explanation. So it's 70% is on the quality. So this would be like your written responses that you're going to submit, and 30% is going to be based on the price. So that's how they're going to calculate the scores. And they also then give you an explanation of for your written responses, how they're actually going to score that. So they're using a 0 to 5 scoring methodology. So this is what they're going to apply. So when they get your response back in, say I'm the evaluator, excuse me, I'm going to be looking at your response to that particular question, and I'm going to have this in front of me, this 0 to 5. So I'm going to look at where does that sit within that evaluation methodology. So that's really important for you to know, because what you want to do is try and get to a 5. What I would always suggest, and what I do with my clients, is we write the response and then we come back and we score it as if we were an evaluator. So that could be you do it, or you get someone else within your business to do it, or externally, and you're really going to look at, does this meet the requirements of a 5? Where does it fall short? And how can we sort of plug those gaps to get it up to the highest score? Sometimes there might be things where you can't get a 5. Like there could be something where you don't address one of the areas and you know that, and you might just think, well, we're going to take the hit on that, but we know that we're going to score 4 on that instead of 5. But it's really good practice to do that evaluation for yourself afterwards. So they're just explaining a little bit about how they're going to evaluate it. And then in terms of the actual courses that you're putting forward, again, they're explaining for each one how they're going to evaluate that. So basically what they're saying is it's 5 points per course, and you must achieve at least 3 points to be able to be considered for that course. So if you score a 0, 1 or a 2 for a particular course, like they just won't consider you for that. They're basically saying that it's not up to the standard that they are looking for. So you just need to confirm that you are, you've read and you've understood the quality assessment process, and then you're going to select what courses that it is that you are going to deliver. So if you are delivering 5 different courses, you're going to select 5 boxes. What that then does is it allows for additional boxes to open up down below. So if you were just offering one particular course, you're just going to select that. And then you're going to provide information about the course. So what is the title of the course? What is the category of the course? Is it accredited? What is the staff qualifications? So that is a pass or fail. Do they have the qualifications or do they not? Pretty much. And then it's asking about, is it for the universal offer, the additional offer, or the intensive offer? So the universal offer, I don't know if you guys have read this in the documents, but the universal offer is basically, it's open to everyone. The additional offer is for additional support needs, and then the intensive offer is for more intensive specialised provision. And then you're going to answer specific questions about your service provision and that specific course. So this part is going to be scored, and you need to provide that information within the text boxes in this case. So sometimes within tenders they let you provide your response in an uploaded document. For this one, they're using the text boxes, so you've actually got for each question 4,000 words. No, characters, sorry, not words. Don't write 4,000 words. You've got 4,000 characters that you've got to play with in terms of that response. So what I would suggest, the way that I do that, is I write it in a Word document, do the character count and everything in there. Any edits, any reviews, everything I do is done on Word, and then
it's copied and pasted into those 2 text boxes. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. So when you're responding to these questions, what you need to make sure is that you are covering every single point that's been asked within that question. So when you're doing your sort of question answer structure within your Word document, I would have these things as sort of subheadings. You might need to take the subheadings out when you copy and paste it because it might make the character count too big, but you want to make sure that you've covered all of those specific points within the character count that's allowed. So I would suggest each bullet point should be a heading and make sure that you've covered that. Just like some top tips to think about when you're doing the written responses, these are the parts that are going to take the most time. So like I generally would say between like approximately 4 hours for an A4 page of writing is what I would put when I'm working with a client. So if you can think about that in terms of what time commitment you need to put aside for doing these written responses, I would definitely make sure that you plan in quite a bit of time on that, and you want to plan in time for someone to review it and to do any revisions if you need to as well. So the first thing would be make sure you have enough time to actually do a good written submission. You need to make clear within your response that you meet their specification and their requirements. And when you are talking about what you're going to deliver, what I do when I'm reviewing people's bids is apply the so what test. So a lot of people will talk about their solution, like we do this, we do that, but they don't actually talk about what is the benefits of that solution. So you want to really talk about, right, we do this and this is what the outcome of this is. This is how this benefits the client. This is how this is going to benefit you or this course. So it's really focusing on what is going to be the benefits of your solution that you're offering to them. Weaving little bits of evidence through, so we're going to do this for you, we've done this for another client, here was the outcome of that. That type of thing is very helpful as well. So yeah, you've got those 2 different text boxes, and then if you are doing more than one course, the more boxes you tick above, like that's just going to open up this again, and it's just the same questions for each one. Okay, just go down to the next question. So question 2 is about service provision. And this is about your organisation's ability to support children and young people who face barriers to learning. So this is not specific to the exact course. If you're offering a range of courses, this is more like what is your overall approach. And again, the same sort of tips would apply. Make sure you've got enough time. Think about what the solution is and how that's going to benefit these people. Weave in bits of evidence or past case studies if you can, and make sure that you're sticking to that character limit. So again, you've got those 2 text boxes to be able to submit that. The third question is about fair work. So the fair work section is they want to know how you are progressing towards the Fair Work First criteria, and basically what I would be doing there is framing that response around those 7 sort of points within Fair Work First. The Scottish Government has got really good guidance on their website about Fair Work First in terms of what good looks like, so it's, I think, worth having a look. We can send the link for that. It's worth just having a look in terms of what are you already doing at the moment to make sure that your staff are treated well, and is there anything that you could commit to going forward? And sometimes when you look at that, you realise you're doing more than what you think that you're doing. So again, that's another 4,000 character response that you're going to do. And then the community benefits point is basically you are confirming that you would commit to those community benefits. So you're not being asked to explain what community benefits you're going to deliver at the moment. You're just committing to, if you make £1 million from the contract, you're going to deliver 6 points of community benefits as a result. Okay, and then we go on to your workforce. So they want to know what size of organisation you are. They want to know if you are based in North Lanarkshire and are you a start-up business. And again, this information is not going to necessarily impact if you're awarded or not, but they want to know this information for their sort of statistics. Are you a third sector organisation? So all these questions are more for statistical information. Then they go on to ask a few more questions around some of the fair work stuff. You'll have covered some of that in your response anyway, but they want to know, do you use 0 hours contracts? If yes, who's affected by that? And basically they just want to know that you're not using that in a unreasonable way. Do you pay the living wage? Are you accredited? And if not, do you pay it anyway? Do you meet your requirements under the Modern Slavery Act? And that's just a yes or no question. Most of the businesses here probably don't have the obligation to publish a modern slavery statement or anything like that, but you just want to make sure that you are complying with that. And then this is where the forms come in. So I'll actually open them up in a second, but we've got the subcontracting form, we've got the serious and organised crime questions. So you're saying yes to those. You have read and understood what that says, and then the form of tender and your submission certificate. So again, those are all a browse, add the document and save that. And then you're just going to save and exit your response. I'll go into those documents in a little second. And then the final part is your commercial response. So just quickly look at that, but we will also go into the spreadsheet for that.
Question on the commercial response, actually, if you're opening
Okay.
it up. So the question was, if a course is made up of units, do you have to list all units in the pricing schedule or just the course title?
Let me open the document and then I'll have a look, see if that can make a bit more sense to me. So it says here, so basically in terms of submitting your pricing schedule, it is just a file upload again. So you're sort of completing that offline and submitting it in here. You're just going to save and exit your response. And then if we have completed all of those 3 sections, basically it's going to say that there's no missing mandatory responses. All you then do then is you click this top right hand button, submit response. It's not going to let me show you because I've not filled everything in, but that then submits it to the buyer. So as I said earlier, they get a notification through in their email to say that they've received a response. They don't know who it's from, and they can't open it until the tender deadline is passed. If you were to submit your response tomorrow and then next week something comes up, or you think that you wanted to add something that would enhance your score, when you've submitted, there does then appear a little box next to the submit response and it says withdraw. So you can withdraw it, make amendments and then resubmit it, as long as you do that before the deadline. So if you've submitted it, like I say, and then you realise that you want to add something else, that is possible. Excuse me. Right, I'm going to just jump over to some of these actual documents now. Does that make sense to you in terms of PCST and like how you fill in all those sections? Is everybody okay with that? While I just open up the document, the price schedule first.
Elaine said yes.
Remind myself what that said.
Excellent. So yeah, everything's making sense so far.
Good, good. Okay, so The flexible framework, let's see exactly what it said. So the question was, so it's like a course that's made up of different modules, is that right? Is that how I'm understanding what was asked there?
Sorry, let me read the question again. So it was, if a course is made up of units, do you have to list all units in the pricing schedule or just the course title?
I think I would actually ask a question about that via the Q&A tool. So my gut instinct is you want to put the high level course name in there, not the individual modules, but I'm not North Lanarkshire Council, so why don't you ask a question on that? I think that would be worth just clarifying with them. And then you are putting like an hourly rate in. That's the part that's going to be evaluated. So I guess whether you were listing it as individual modules or a full course, it doesn't really make much of a difference because they're going to evaluate just based on the hourly rate anyway. But I think I would ask that question. They have got an example. Let's see what the example says. Automotive engineering. Okay, yeah, that doesn't really help, to be honest. So, yeah, I think I would ask a question on that because I'm not sure. But I think high level name of the course would be what you need to provide. But yeah, let's put that one back to the council. They have put a guide rate as well. So they've said the guide rate is £55 per hour. They have said that if you go over that, they're not necessarily going to exclude your submission. So like it could be that there's a really specialist course and everybody puts in £75 an hour. And then that means that they either accept that or they're not able to deliver that course because that's the market rate. But they're basically saying if your price is more than £55, we're probably not going to engage your offer. So they're sort of leaving their options open there. But you need to put in the price that is right for you and that allows you to deliver that. Right, let me just see if it's going to let me open up some other documents. So the other sort of key documents that need to be completed are there's the form of tender, and I think these are fairly self-explanatory, but let's just don't know. So slow today. Is there any more questions while I'm waiting on that opening?
Nope, that was the last one that came through. Thank you.
That's good. Right, so the form of tender basically is just on your offer pretty much. So all you're doing there is putting in a date and putting in basically your details and your company information. So hopefully that's fairly in PCST. There's a bit where you can upload that. Mentioned sort of mission. But now it's not something I've seen much of in the past. But it's included a lot now. So again, you're just putting the date in and you are basically just confirming that all the information that you're providing is accurate, that there's no like bribery and stuff like that involved. So you're just signing off that that's none of that, you've not been involved in anything dodgy to be able to submit, and you're just signing that, putting in your information again, and that just gets uploaded in PCST. Guys, the crime one, contractor schedule, because that's the one I've clicked. This schedule this. If it ever lets me open it. It's very annoying when you're waiting on these things to open, isn't it? I mean, it's fairly straightforward in terms of what it's asking. It's just asking for a list. So, who are they? What is their registration name and number? What is it that they're going to be doing? And estimated value are they going to receive as a result of this? So that's, again, final document. It's just time. Form, this is something that's just standard that goes out in most tenders now. Excuse me, and they want to know that you've not been involved in anything dodgy again. So it's not going to open for some reason. Very annoying.
Is it the schedule
Okay.
of approved subcontractors
Maybe
that's opened for us?
No, I've shared that one already. It's the SOC one, so I'm just waiting for it to open, but it's just doing the little circle thing. Right, it's coming up now. So again, it's probably quite self-explanatory. We probably don't really need to explain it, but basically, they want you to declare that you've not been involved in any serious and organised crime, and essentially, like, they can do some further due diligence on that, if that is something that they feel that they should do. So you're just putting in your details. You're basically just saying that we've not been involved in any serious or organised crime. And again, that's uploaded alongside your submission. And that is pretty much it in terms of the whistle stop tour. So is there any questions? Is it clear enough in terms of what's required of you, what you're going to have to do? Is there anything that you're not sure about? Maybe if anybody's read